Marcus, I need you in my office. Now. Mr. Richardson's voice cut through the Monday morning chatter of our accounting firm like a knife. The words carried that tone, the one that meant someone was either getting promoted or fired, and judging by his expression as he stood in his doorway, it wasn't going to be good news. I followed him into his glass-walled office, where he gestured for me to sit across from his massive mahogany desk. Through the transparent walls, I could see my coworkers pretending not to watch while obviously straining to catch any hint of what was happening. "Marcus, we have a problem," Richardson began, not bothering with pleasantries. "The Morrison account is a disaster. Their quarterly audit is due next Monday, and we're 3 weeks behind schedule." I knew exactly what account he was talking about. Morrison Industries was our biggest client, worth nearly 40% of our annual revenue. They were also the most demanding, constantly changing requirements and adding last-minute requests that turned simple audits into marathon sessions. "Sir, I've been working overtime every day for the past 2 weeks trying to catch up on Morrison. The problem isn't the hours I'm putting in. It's that they keep changing their requirements every time we think we're close to finishing." Richardson waved his hand dismissively. "I don't want to hear excuses, Marcus. I want solutions. And here's the solution. You're going to work this weekend. Saturday and Sunday. Full days, whatever it takes to get Morrison caught up." The words hit me like a physical blow. Sunday. He was asking me to work on Sunday. "Mr. Richardson, I can work Saturday, absolutely. But I can't work on Sunday. That's my Sabbath day. I go to church, I spend time with my family, and I rest. It's part of my religious beliefs." Richardson's face darkened like storm clouds gathering. "Marcus, let me be very clear about something. Morrison Industries is threatening to pull their account if we don't deliver this audit on time. If we lose Morrison, we lose almost half our revenue. If we lose half our revenue, we start laying people off. And if we start laying people off, guess who's first on the list?" The threat hung in the air between us like a sword. I could feel my heart pounding as I processed what he was really saying. Work on Sunday or lose my job. "Sir, I understand the situation is serious, but my faith isn't something I can just set aside when it's convenient. Keeping the Sabbath holy is one of the 10 Commandments. It's not negotiable for me." "Well, then maybe you need to decide what's more important to you, your job or your religion. Because right now, they seem to be mutually exclusive." I sat there for a moment, staring at this man who had just asked me to choose between my livelihood and my faith. In the 5 years I'd worked for this company, I'd never missed a deadline, never complained about overtime, never given them any reason to question my dedication. But now, because of one client's unreasonable demands and poor planning, I was being forced to compromise the very foundation of who I was. "Mr. Richardson, can I have until tomorrow to think about this?" "Marcus, there's nothing to think about. I need your answer right now. Are you working this Sunday or not?" I looked through the glass walls at my coworkers, some of whom had become genuine friends over the years. I thought about my mortgage, my car payment, my wife Sarah's medical bills from her surgery last year. I thought about how hard it would be to find another job in this economy, especially at my age. But then I thought about something else. I thought about what it would mean to stand in church next Sunday, knowing I had chosen money over God. I thought about what it would mean to look my children in the eye and explain why Daddy's job was more important than Daddy's faith. "Mr. Richardson," I said quietly, "I need to tell you something, and what I'm about to say might surprise you." Richardson leaned back in his chair, clearly expecting me to cave to his demands. He had no idea that what was about to come out of my mouth would not only shock him, but would end up changing everything for both of us in ways neither of us could have imagined. "Mr. Richardson," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "I've worked for this company for 5 years. In that time, I've never called in sick, never missed a deadline, and never asked for special treatment. I've worked late nights, early mornings, and weekends when the job required it. But there's one thing I will never do, and that's work on Sunday." Richardson's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "Marcus, you're making a very expensive mistake here. Do you have any idea how much the Morrison account is worth to this company?" "I do, sir. And I also know how much my integrity is worth to me. It's worth more than any paycheck." "Integrity?" Richardson laughed bitterly. Marcus, we're talking about one day, one Sunday. Surely your God would understand that sometimes we have to make sacrifices for our responsibilities. With respect, sir, God is my ultimate responsibility. Everything else comes second. The words seemed to echo in the glass office. I could see Richardson processing what I just said, trying to understand how someone could prioritize anything over their career in today's competitive economy. Marcus, let me paint you a picture of what happens if you refuse to work Sunday. Monday morning, Morrison calls and cancels their contract. By Tuesday, I'm in meetings with the partners explaining how we lost our biggest client. By Wednesday, they're asking me who's responsible. By Thursday, you're cleaning out your desk. Is that really what you want? What I want, Mr. Richardson, is to be able to look at myself in the mirror every morning knowing I haven't compromised who I am for what I can get. And I want to be able to teach my children that some things in life are more important than money. Richardson stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the city skyline filled with office buildings where thousands of people were making similar compromises every day. Marcus, I'm going to share something with you that I don't normally share with employees. My father built this company from nothing. He worked 7 days a week for 20 years to make it successful. He missed family dinners, church services, his children's birthdays, all in the name of building something that would last. He turned back to face me, and I could see something vulnerable in his expression that I'd never seen before. And you know what? It worked. This company employs 43 people. It supports 43 families. It generates millions in revenue every year. But my father died of a heart attack at 58, and do you know what his last words to me were? I shook my head, suddenly understanding that this conversation had moved beyond a simple workplace disagreement. He said, "Son, I hope it was worth it." And honestly, Marcus, I'm still not sure if it was. The confession hung between us like a bridge neither of us had expected to cross. For a moment, Richardson wasn't my boss threatening my job. He was just a man questioning the choices that had brought him to this moment. Mr. Richardson, I'm sorry about your father, but doesn't that prove my point? If we sacrifice everything that matters to us for our work, what do we really have at the end? We have security, Marcus. We have stability. We have the ability to provide for our families. But at what cost? Sir, I've seen too many men who gained the whole world but lost their souls. I don't want to be one of them. Richardson returned to his desk and sat down heavily, suddenly looking older than his 55 years. Marcus, you're putting me in an impossible position here. If I let you refuse to work Sunday, what happens when other employees start making similar demands? What happens to the concept of teamwork and shared sacrifice? Sir, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for religious accommodation, which is protected by federal law. And I'm not asking you to accept my decision. I'm telling you that this is my decision, regardless of the consequences. Even if the consequence is losing your job, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Even if the consequence is losing my job. The silence that followed was deafening. Richardson stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language, like he couldn't comprehend how someone could voluntarily choose principle over paycheck. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Of course, sir. Do you really believe that refusing to work one Sunday is worth destroying your career over? I looked him straight in the eye. Mr. Richardson, I believe that a man who won't stand up for what he believes in doesn't really believe in anything at all. And a man who doesn't believe in anything isn't worth much to anyone, including his employer. Marcus, I continued, leaning forward slightly, let me ask you something. What if instead of threatening me for standing up for my beliefs, you tried to understand them? What if instead of seeing my faith as a liability, you saw it as an asset? Richardson frowned, clearly not expecting the conversation to take this turn. I'm not following you, Marcus. Sir, you know my work record. You know I'm reliable, honest, and dedicated. You know I've never cut corners or compromised on quality. Do you think those qualities exist in spite of my faith, or because of it? What would you do if your boss asked you to choose between your faith and your job? Let us know below. For the first time since I'd entered his office, Richardson seemed genuinely thoughtful rather than just angry. I suppose I never really thought about it that way. The same faith that makes me refuse to work on Sunday is the same faith that makes me honest with our clients, even when it might cost us money. The same faith that makes me protect the Sabbath is the same faith that makes me show up early and stay late the other 6 days of the week without complaining. You can't have one without the other. Richardson was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against his desk as he processed what I was saying. Marcus, even if I accept your argument about the connection between your faith and your work ethic, it doesn't solve our immediate problem. Morrison still needs their audit completed, and we still need to meet their deadline. You're right, sir. But maybe the problem isn't that I won't work Sunday. Maybe the problem is that we've structured our business in a way that requires constant crisis management instead of proper planning. What do you mean? I leaned forward, feeling like I was about to cross a line that would either save my job or end it permanently. Mr. Richardson, Morrison has been our client for 3 years. In those 3 years, how many times have they created last-minute emergencies like this one? Richardson thought for a moment, his business mind automatically cataloging the pattern. I don't know. Probably 6 or 7 times. And each time, we've responded by having our staff work weekends, pull all-nighters, and sacrifice their personal lives to meet Morrison's poor planning. What message does that send to Morrison about how we value our own team? It sends the message that we're dedicated to customer service. No, sir. It sends the message that we're willing to abuse our own employees to cover for their lack of organization. And what message does it send to our employees? Richardson was starting to look uncomfortable, but not in the angry way he had earlier. This was a different kind of discomfort, the kind that comes from hearing truth you don't want to face. Marcus, where exactly are you going with this? I'm going to suggest something that might sound crazy, but I think it could actually strengthen our business rather than hurt it. I'm listening. What if we told Morrison that we don't work weekends? What if we told them that our employees' work-life balance is non-negotiable, and that if they want our services, they need to plan accordingly? Richardson's eyes widened in shock. Marcus, they'd fire us in a heartbeat. We'd lose 40% of our revenue overnight. Would we? Sir, how many other accounting firms in this city do you think are dealing with the exact same problem we are? How many other firms are burning out their employees trying to meet Morrison's unreasonable demands? I don't know. Probably most of them. Exactly. And what if we were the one firm that offered something different? What if we were the firm that attracted the best employees because we treated them with respect? What if we were the firm that clients chose not because we were the cheapest or the most accommodating, but because we were the most reliable and professional? Richardson was shaking his head, but I could see him working through the logic despite his skepticism. Marcus, that's a nice theory, but in the real world, clients like Morrison have all the power. They can take their business anywhere they want. Can they? Sir, think about why Morrison keeps coming back to us, even when they're constantly dissatisfied with our turnaround times. It's because our work quality is excellent. It's because we catch errors that other firms miss. It's because, despite all the deadline drama, we deliver superior results. I could see Richardson processing this, his business mind working through the implications even as his fear of change resisted them. Marcus, even if you're right about our value proposition, I can't just call Morrison and tell them we won't work weekends anymore. They'd see it as breach of contract. What if we didn't tell them we won't work weekends? What if we told them something else instead? Such as, I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to propose would either get me fired immediately or change everything. What if we told them that we're implementing a new quality assurance program that requires all work to be completed during regular business hours with adequate time for review and revision? What if we positioned it not as a limitation, but as an enhancement to our service? Richardson stared at me in amazement. You want to spin our refusal to work weekends as a quality improvement? I want to reframe our boundaries as professional standards, because that's what they are, sir. A company that respects its employees' time and well-being is a company that produces better work. When people aren't exhausted and stressed, they make fewer mistakes. When they have time for proper review, they catch errors before they become problems. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Instead of the tense silence of conflict, it felt like the thoughtful silence of possibility. "Marcus," Richardson said slowly, "what you're suggesting would require us to completely restructure how we do business." "Yes, sir. It would. It would require us to risk our biggest client." "Yes, sir. It would. It would require us to bet everything on the idea that doing the right thing is also good business." "Yes, sir. It would." Richardson looked at me for a long moment, and I could see something changing in his expression. A shift from fear to curiosity, from resistance to possibility. "You know what, Marcus? Maybe it's time we found out if my father was right about what really matters." Over the next 2 weeks, Richardson and I worked together to develop what we called our Professional Excellence Initiative. We crafted language that positioned our new boundaries not as limitations, but as enhancements to our service quality. We developed timelines that built in adequate review periods. We created communication protocols that would prevent last-minute surprises. The real test came when we had to present this new approach to Morrison Industries. Janet Steele, Morrison's CFO, was on the phone, and she was not happy about the delayed audit. "Richardson, I want to know exactly how you plan to prevent this kind of deadline crisis in the future." Richardson looked at me across his office, then put the phone on speaker. "Janet, Marcus is going to explain our new approach to client service." "Ms. Steele," I began, "we've been analyzing our processes, and we've identified some improvements that will significantly enhance the quality and reliability of our work for Morrison." "I'm listening." "We're implementing a comprehensive quality assurance program that ensures all audit work is completed during regular business hours by rested, focused professionals. This eliminates the errors that can occur when people are working under extreme time pressure or when they're fatigued from weekend work." There was a pause. "Are you telling me that you won't work weekends anymore?" "We're telling you that we're prioritizing quality over speed, which ultimately serves Morrison's interests better. When our team has adequate time for review and verification, you get more accurate results with fewer revisions." "But what about our deadlines?" "We'll meet every deadline, Ms. Steele, but we'll meet them with work that's been produced under optimal conditions, which means fewer errors, less back and forth, and more reliable financial reporting." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Thompson, let me ask you something. How confident are you that this approach will actually improve our service?" "Confident enough to guarantee it, Ms. Steele. If our new approach doesn't result in higher quality work and fewer revision cycles, we'll go back to the old way of doing things." "All right, I'm willing to try this for 1 quarter. But if I see any decline in service quality or missed deadlines, we're going back to the previous arrangement." "Understood. And Ms. Steele, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the results." After we hung up, Richardson looked at me with a mixture of admiration and terror. "Marcus, we just bet the company on your theory about work-life balance." "No, sir. We just bet the company on the idea that treating people with dignity produces better results than treating them like machines." 3 months later, I was sitting in our conference room, but everything felt different. The atmosphere was relaxed, collegial, even joyful, a stark contrast to the stressed urgency that had once defined our workplace. "Marcus, I have to share something with you," Richardson said as our leadership team gathered for our quarterly review. "Yesterday I got a call from Harrison and Associates. They want to know how we've managed to improve our client satisfaction scores by 30% while reducing our employee turnover to practically zero." Sarah Martinez, our operations manager, laughed. "Did you tell them it was because we stopped trying to be everything to everyone?" "Actually, I told them something even more radical than that." Richardson stood up and walked to the whiteboard, where he wrote 4 words, "People before profits works." 6 months ago, if someone had told me that putting employee well-being ahead of client demands would actually improve our business, I would have laughed them out of the room. But here we are. Tom Bradley, our senior partner who had been the biggest skeptic of our new approach, nodded in agreement. The Morrison transition was just the beginning. Once word got out that we were the firm that wouldn't compromise on quality or work-life balance, we started attracting a completely different caliber of clients. And employees, Jennifer Walsh, our HR director, added enthusiastically. We've had 12 unsolicited resumes this month from experienced accountants who want to work somewhere that respects their personal lives. The word is spreading in the industry that we're different. I still found it hard to believe how dramatically things had changed. The Morrison conversation that we'd all feared would end our biggest client relationship had actually strengthened it. Janet Steele had become one of our most vocal advocates, recommending us to other companies specifically because of our professional boundaries and superior quality control. But the most interesting change, Richardson continued, isn't in our client relationships or our employee satisfaction. It's in our profitability. David Chun, our financial analyst, pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop. Our revenue is up 18%. Our costs are down 12%. And our profit margins are the highest they've been in company history. How is that possible? I asked, even though I'd been watching the transformation happen in real time. Because we're working smarter, not harder, Sarah explained. When you know you can't just throw hours at a problem, you find more efficient solutions. When you know you can't rely on weekend work to fix poor planning, you plan better from the beginning. When people aren't exhausted and stressed, they make fewer mistakes that require expensive corrections. Jennifer pulled out her own notes. Our sick leave usage is down 40%. Our workers' compensation claims are down 60%. Our employee satisfaction surveys show the highest scores we've ever recorded. People actually want to come to work now. Richardson sat back down and looked directly at me. Marcus, that morning when you refused to work Sunday, did you have any idea this would happen? I thought about it carefully. Honestly, Mr. Richardson, I thought I was probably going to get fired. I never imagined that standing up for my faith would lead to transforming our entire business model. But you stood up for it anyway. I had to, because if I compromised on something that fundamental to who I am, what would stop me from compromising on everything else? Jennifer leaned forward. Marcus, can I share something? When you gave that impromptu presentation about restructuring our business around employee well-being, it wasn't just about work policies for me. It was the first time I'd ever seen someone in a professional setting say that some things are more important than money. And it gave the rest of us permission to believe that too, Tom added. I've been in business for 25 years, and I always thought you had to choose between doing right and doing well. You proved that's a false choice. Richardson pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Marcus, there's something else I need to share with everyone. Last week, I got a call from the Regional Business Association. They want to feature our company in their annual report as an example of innovative management practices. He opened the folder and pulled out a draft article. The headline is, How One Employee's Religious Conviction Transformed an Entire Company. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. Mr. Richardson, I don't need any recognition. I just did what I felt was right. That's exactly why you deserve recognition. Marcus, do you realize that your decision to stand up for your faith has affected 43 families? That every person in this company goes home to their family dinner on time now? That our employees actually take their vacations without worrying about work emergencies? Sarah nodded enthusiastically. My daughter asked me last week why I'm always in such a good mood now. I told her it's because Mommy works at a place where people care about each other as much as they care about making money. Tom raised his hand. Can I ask you something, Marcus? Do you think this transformation would have happened if you had compromised and worked that Sunday? I thought about it carefully. No, I don't think it would have. Because if I had compromised on something that fundamental to who I am, I wouldn't have had the moral authority to challenge anything else about how we do business. So your refusal to work Sunday wasn't just about keeping the Sabbath, Sarah said. It was about establishing that some things are non-negotiable. And once we established that principle, Richardson added, everything else became possible. David looked up from his financial projections. You know what's really interesting? Our competitors are starting to copy our policies. 3 firms in the city have announced new work-life balance initiatives in the past month. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, Richardson said with a smile. But they're missing the point. It's not about the policies themselves. It's about the heart behind the policies. As our meeting wrapped up, I realized that what had started as a simple matter of religious conviction had become something much larger. It had become a demonstration that businesses could be both successful and soul-honoring, that you could build something profitable without sacrificing what's precious. 6 months after that terrifying Monday morning when Richardson demanded I choose between my job and my faith, our company had become living proof that the choice itself was false. You don't have to choose between doing right and doing well. In fact, doing right is often the key to doing well. But the real transformation wasn't in our business metrics or our client relationships. The real transformation was in the understanding that when you refuse to compromise on what matters most, you don't lose everything, you discover what's truly possible. Here's the question that will change how you think about work, faith, and success. What if the thing you're most afraid to stand up for is actually the key to unlocking everything you've been trying to achieve? What if your deepest convictions aren't obstacles to overcome but advantages to leverage? What if the courage to say no to the wrong things is what finally opens the door to saying yes to the right things? Share your thoughts below and tell us where you're watching from, because this story proves that standing up for your beliefs doesn't just protect your integrity, it can transform entire organizations and inspire movements that change how business gets done.